Ever find a home that you just fell in love with and had to have? Well, if you've ever done any house shopping at all, you know what that experience is like. But does it necessarily mean that's the perfect house for you that you should buy? Look, I get it. In this environment particularly, house hunting can be daunting, disappointing, and frustrating. But that being said, there are certain types of homes that I would not buy. Now, I've seen a lot of homes in my day. I've seen a thing or two, and there are certain types of homes that I would not consider buying. So in this video, what I'm going to do is share with you the types of houses that I wouldn't buy. So with that being said, let's dive in. First type of house I wouldn't buy is a house that's over 100 years old. Now, I love old homes. In fact, that's one of my favorite activities is going out and touring old homes. I love them for their architecture, for their charm, for their features, for the craftsmanship. But here's the thing with 100-year-old homes in particular. They've had a long life, and you really have to go look at their history. How many owners have they had? How many times have they been renovated? And to what extent have they been renovated? Because the problem with these types of homes is there's potential for very expensive problems. So let's take plumbing for instance. These old homes that are 100 years old use lead pipes. And a lot of the times these pipes have started to clog up just due to sedimentation, which reduces water pressure. In fact, replacing lead pipes in a home can cost you tens of thousands of dollars. I bought a 62-year-old home, and which I lived in, by the way, for 20 years. And at some point I had to replace all the lead pipes in the home. Fortunately, this was a small home, and I did all the work myself, so it did mitigate the cost to some degree, but it was still somewhat expensive. And then we have electrical. Back in the day when these homes were built, they used what was called tube and knob wiring. Now, most of the homes probably have mitigated that, but it's still possible to find it. In fact, in my little 62-year-old home, there was tube and knob wiring in the attic. So I needed to call an electrician to come out and replace that. And while he was out there, I also had him check the rest of the wiring. Why? Because wiring that is 50, 60, 100 years old, the insulation starts to fray and disintegrate, which could potentially be a fire hazard. Now, another issue is asbestos. Back in the day, what they did is they wrapped the hot water pipes in asbestos, particularly those pipes that were next to like the wooden joists. Why? Because they wanted to prevent the possibility of those wooden joists catching on fire. In addition, tile floors back then contained asbestos. So if you're going to remove these tile floors, it's an expensive proposition. You really need to engage the services of an environmental professional to professionally remove the asbestos tiles. Another consideration is the fact that you might call some of these homes, they have what we'll call substandard or unsafe features. Another way to say that is these homes have a lot of extra charm. Low ceilings, obsolete floor plans, fireplaces that are no longer operational. So if you have kids, particularly small young kids, these potentially could be serious health hazards. Well, I grew up in a house that had a laundry chute, and I can tell you, my two brothers and I can't tell you the crazy things we did with that laundry chute. So that's number one. Number two has to do with homes in a floodplain. Nobody in their right mind would buy a home in a floodplain. But here's the thing, I'm speaking more specifically to homes that are on, let's say in Florida on the beach or on the eastern or western coastal line. Here I just think you're taking on an enormous risk, and this is a risk I'm not willing to take. But there are people who make a good argument that you shouldn't even buy a home in a 100-year or a 500-year floodplain. So what do I mean by that? If your home is in a 100-year floodplain, then there's the potential in the next 100-year period that your house could experience a flood. Same with the 500-year floodplain. Over a 500-year period, you can expect to see one flood. So there is risk associated with the home in these two floodplains. A 500, it's more minimal than 100, but that's a decision that each person has to make, and it really depends on the location of the house. But having said that, regardless, it's going to increase your homeowner's insurance. Here in the Kansas City metropolitan area, you can expect on the average to spend at least an extra $900 on your homeowner's insurance. So the third type of house that I would not purchase is a home with an underground oil tank, even if that underground oil tank has been decommissioned. So if you're looking at a house with an underground oil tank, you really need to check to find out what is required to decommission a live oil tank. And basically what you're going to do is you're going to fill it, you're going to remove the oil and fill it with sand. Now the homeowner should follow the proper procedures that are set forth by the local municipality, get the proper permits, follow the process correctly, and then have the authorities come out to inspect the site, and they'll also take soil to see if the soil is contaminated. Even if that has been done, I would still insist that the oil tank be pulled out of the ground and the land retested for contamination. Now, I actually heard a story. It wasn't here, but I heard it from another realtor, in which when the market was very, very hot and people were buying houses and waiving inspections, which personally I would never do, they bought this house only to find out later that they had this oil tank underground. And when they actually had it excavated and removed, they found out that there was leaching in the soil. And the cost to remediate that, get this, it was $250,000. So my advice is, unless that tank has been extricated and the soil's been tested, I would not proceed with the purchase of the house. The next houses I wouldn't buy are homes that are being sold by LLC Flippers. Look, I have nothing against LLCs. In fact, I work with 2 LLC clients. They do serve a good purpose because they buy dilapidated houses, they renovate them, and they put them back on the market, adding to the inventory, which is very limited at best. But I'm talking about homes that have been renovated by inexperienced flippers who hire inexperienced contractors who end up doing a poor job renovating these homes. And so if you are looking at a flipper house, what you want to do when you walk in that house is you want to pay particular attention to the cosmetics. That's right. Because if they do a poor job on the cosmetics, so for instance, they do a poor job with the crown molding, it doesn't fit right, same with the baseboard, they've done a poor job with the trim work, the painting. These are all red flags, because if they're doing a poor job on the cosmetics, imagine what a poor job they've done on the key components of the house, the things you can't even see behind the walls. So for me, if I see shoddy workmanship, you can bet your life savings they did shoddy workmanship elsewhere in the house. You can go on Zillow and you can review the home sales history, so you can see what it has sold for in the past, what the LLC purchased the home for, and what they're selling it for, so you can get an idea, in theory, how much money they've actually put in the home based on what they're selling it for. Like I said, when you go into a house that's being sold via flipper, pay attention to the cosmetics, because again, if the cosmetic work is shoddy, then you can bet your soul the rest of the house is shoddy as well. So the last type of house I wouldn't buy is a house that has over-the-top custom features. So let's say you walk into a house and it has this 500-gallon aquatic tank built into the wall. I mean, this is probably going to be really, really cool. Or you find this neat hidden room, or there's over-the-top custom-made man cave. All these things might be really cool. They might, you're getting all excited. You can see yourself enjoying these. But over time, You might get tired of taking care of a 500-gallon fish tank. Or that man cave, it might get old really fast, and your lifestyle changes. So now you're looking at the prospect of renovating. What's it going to cost to remove that 500-gallon gas tank and retrofit the room? Same with the man cave. How much money are you going to have to spend to make those 2 rooms now usable? What happens if you want to sell the house? Are you going to have to try to sell it with that in place? Or are you going to have to make it or renovate it in order to make the house more saleable? For instance, I recently just toured a $1.25 million home. They actually made over $2 million worth of improvements to this house. Now, this is a traditional style home, and the current owners actually went in and when they renovated the house, they put in this Euro style, very sleek, I'll call it kind of a cold kitchen. The problem with this is it doesn't really fit the architectural style of the home. So if you were to buy this home over time, would you decide that, it doesn't really fit and I want to change it to make it more in keeping with the architectural style, you're probably looking at about $100,000 just to make that changeover. So here's the interesting thing. They just recently reduced the house about $100,000 because this particular kitchen, in my opinion, is why this particular house is having difficulty selling. Because it's in a great location, it's in a historic neighborhood, and all the other homes in this neighborhood have sold quickly, but this is what I believe to be the real holdup. You got to look at these types of things and figure out how many people really are going to want a 500-gallon fish tank, or this over-the-top man cave, or this Euro-style kitchen that has nothing really to do with the architectural style of the home. These are things that will actually impede the sale of your home or hurt the value of your home. You have to think very hard about how much you are enamored with these over-the-top custom features. Here's a little tip that could save you some time. And that is, if you come across some homes that you really are interested in, ask for the seller's disclosures. Now, you can't get this on Zillow. You're going to have to go with your agent because they're on MLS. But these disclosures are going to tell you all you need to know about the home. It's going to tell you about the age of the roof, the HVAC, the AC, the hot water heater. It'll even tell you whether or not the house has had termite damage or other damage like mold. Now, the homeowner, they're required to answer these questions honestly. Ask for the disclosures before you actually go out. That's going to save you some time. Doing these simple little steps will not only save you time, but it's going to save you potentially tens of thousands of dollars. So all that being said, thank you for taking the time to watch this video. And by the way, if this is your first time to the channel, please subscribe to the channel. All the information can be found in the comments section below. If you need a real estate agent in your area, please click on the link below and I'll be happy to connect you with a good real estate agent in your area. Also, if you need financing, I can help you hook you up with a lender in your area as well, as in addition to being a real estate agent, I am also a lender. Thank you for watching the video. Oh, and by the way, my name is Chris Pucci with the Living in Kansas City Real Estate Team, and we help folks just like you every day. So, if you have any questions you want to set up a time to chat, please feel free to do so. Until then, I look forward to showing you around the Kansas City metro area.